Hi, Jessica here. Welcome back to My Transgender Nation. Today we have a guest, Dee Fish. Welcome, Dee.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Dee Fish is a Pennsylvania-based cartoonist, illustrator, and graphic designer. As a cartoonist, she is the creator of the online comic strip Dandy and Company, the fancy slash adventurer series, The Wallkeeper, and the artist on the webcomic Giant Girl Adventures. Currently, she is the creator of Finding Dee, a semi autobiographical webcomic about the trials, tribulations, and humor in coming out as a transgender in your 40s. As a graphic designer, Dee has worked on projects for clients such as Coca-Cola, Sweet Tomatoes, Odwalla, Disney on Ice, Universal Studios theme parks, and many more. And as over 25 years of experience as a graphic designer. She's currently working on a book that is going to be coming out later this summer, Lyopathy and the Single Girl. I said it without messing up, I think. That was pretty good for me.
Lycanthropy.
Lycanthropy. Okay, there we go. It is what it is.
No worries.
So, Dee, thanks for coming and doing this interview today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely. So I thought where we would start today is maybe you could give us a little bit about your personal story. How did you get from where you were to where you are today?
It was like with a lot of people, it was a process that I knew from very, very young, some idea. I just didn't have the words for it from when I was a little kid. I grew up in a bunch of different I've moved a lot of different places, but I grew up mostly on Long Island in New York. And knew from a remarkably young age that what I was being told I was and what I wasn't were not, were two different things. And also learned really early on to hide that and to put that away from. I had a couple of experiences. I've done some comics about it where, I was really young watching like the old Linda Carter Wonder Woman series, and I would, spin on the edge of the bed, and I fell down. I still have a little scar over my eye from hitting my head on the dresser, trying to transform, doing the spin move. And anytime I got into less trouble for needing stitches than I did for why I needed stitches. Basically.
Yep.
One was that was stupid, don't do that again. Oh my goodness. The other one was the thing that lingered. There's a lot of those stories, and I guess everyone's got one version of them or another. The doll that I wanted that I wasn't allowed to have, the expectation of what I was supposed to be that I was just terrible at trying to be. And I just kind of put that into a box at, somewhere in grade school. I went to the school Halloween party dressed as a girl. And that was my first outward attempt at, you have that idea, you're a little kid, you're thinking, oh, I'll go and everyone will just see, oh, that's obviously what you should be, blah, blah. And obviously, no, I just got made fun of. But I got made fun of worse than anywhere else was at home. So like I've said, I put it in a box. I kind of sat on it for a while, did my level best at pretending to be the gender I was told I was, and was terrible at that. And I went through a handful of crappy relationships and made my way until I was, well into where I am now. I'm still with my current partner, my wife Heidi, and I'd met her about 10 and a half years ago now. And on the first date, we sat down and talked for hours, and I put everything on the table, including letting her know what my inner feelings were in regards to my gender.
And you had, at this point, you had not come out.
No, it would be another 4 years before I would come out.
All right.
But I came out to her
Mm-hmm.
as to what was going on in my head. And I still didn't quite have I hadn't committed. I hadn't fully said, yes, this is what I am. Just this is what I feel like inside sometimes. And it's this conflict that I have. And I'd written a short story. I had a previous marriage that ended in divorce, and I'd written a short story afterwards, just this little short story where it was the first time that I'd actively gone out of my way to write a female avatar for myself into a comic.
Okay.
And I named that character Sarah, and it just stuck in the back of my head. And that's currently, spoilers, that's my middle name. So it's Dee Fish.
Okay.
But we had talked about it a lot. And she's never pushed me to experiment or pushed me in any direction. She just has always been very accepting of whatever level of experimentation I wanted to do at any given time. And at the time I was overcompensating physically. I had enormous scraggly Cthulhu facial hair thing going on. Just, anything I could do to mask the idea of, no, I can't be this thing. I was 275, 280 pounds, 6'2", and fairly broad shouldered. And no, I could never do that. There's no way,
How is that even possible, right?
I put up every excuse. I put every excuse
sure.
in front of me saying that it was impossible. My family wouldn't accept it. I would lose my job. I would all the things I was terrified about. And it wasn't until we ended up moving. We had met and we're living in Florida, and we ended up moving up here to Pennsylvania. We had an opportunity to get a house up here, and this is the neighborhood where she grew up here. So this is her hometown. And because I did a lot of my growing up in New York, and it's kind of on the same, is it latitude?
Yeah, latitude is across.
Thank you. I always get those two confused. It was on the same latitude I grew up in, so the seasons I was used to, and I hated Florida. I wanted to get back to seasons and weather and Christmas that felt cold rather than 85 degrees and sweating, stuff like that. So when we moved up here, no one knew me. So we were reinventing our entire lives. She had family up here and she had people she knew up here, but for the most part, we were kind of starting over. I was working freelance as a graphic designer, so I wasn't worried about that. I wasn't going into an office or anything like that. And within 6 months of us moving up here, it went from being this idea in my head that had been spurred on by all these different thoughts over the years, overly vivid dreams that I can still remember that were so vivid that they are functionally memories.
Sure.
And those are the only dreams in my life. I've got there's a handful of dreams I can remember with that level of detail, but every single one of those were dreams where I was as I am now.
Yeah.
Little things like that just kind of became cues for me. And of all the things I was struggling with it and getting closer and getting closer. And it was actually, of all the things, that was finally yep, that was it moment, was one of those silly apps on your phone that does puts makeup on you.
Oh.
That was it.
Really?
That was the last thing that my brain went, huh, I like that. It was the weirdest thing. And I've heard a lot of people complain about those. And I'm like, oh, that was my gateway drug.
Yeah.
And I sat down, I talked to Heidi and we talked it out for, a couple of days, but I was pretty much already decided. And that was going on 7 years ago now.
And she was totally on board with this.
Yeah, she was kind of oh, well, you got here finally. Been waiting for you. She figured that out. She's like, yeah, I know. This is not a surprise.
Yeah, right. She knew before you knew you were going to do it, right?
Oh yeah, she knew before I knew, and it was just kind of a, letting me get here on my own, so that so that I would never doubt whether or not I came
Yeah,
here on my own,
sure, sure.
or was pushed.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I came out. I came out up here in the middle of a Western Pennsylvania town, and it was terrifying. And it took a lot, but all the same stuff that I've heard the same story so many times. Things like where I never wanted to be in the picture, and then within a month I took 1,500 selfies. Stuff like that. I mean, it's on my Facebook wall. It's literally a folder 1,500 selfies deep that only took about 2 months to fill.
Wow.
Because suddenly I liked taking the pictures, and suddenly the smile was more authentic. And
Yeah, sure.
I came out in a series of letters that I'd sent off to individuals first, people that were like, to family members and my closer friends, and by and large the reaction was largely positive for most of my friends. There were a few that just vanished.
Funny how that happens, isn't it?
And my relationship with my family was kind of a weird, like, they don't understand, but they're going to accept it. But then that's dissolved since then, unfortunately. So
that's too bad.
Yeah, there were certain things where my gender and my name were being weaponized. In other words, I got to be Dee and daughter and she only if everyone was in a good mood with me. But if I was saying anything back, or being argumentative or difficult in any way, shape, or form, then I would just constantly get dead named and misgendered.
Oh, joy.
Yeah. So that kind of dissolved about 1.5 years ago, and honestly, I'm happier. I hate to say it that way, but a lot of stress left my life when
sure. That's the last thing you need, especially when you're doing all this, right? It's extra stress.
Yeah. And so then to try, I guess, I'd always been a cartoonist, and I've been doing comic strips and stuff for years. And this is, I guess, I'm almost building the segue in. But the comic strip that I was doing at the time was called Dandy and Company. I've been drawing, it's a little cartoon talking dog, kind of Looney Tunes meets Peanuts. Okay. I'd been doing it for years online, and I had always appeared in like a fourth wall breaking joke of I was there as the cartoonist. I'd pop in every now and again as a character. And so I came out in the strip.
That's kind of cool.
And had the character just kind of like, okay, and then just start giving me crap about the same stuff the character would always give me crap about. Like,
right,
I should be in my strip more and all these other, silly stuff. But then I came out in that form. I was writing a blog, just a regular Tumblr blog that I'd called Finding Dee. And I was writing it for a few months, and I stopped because I was writing it as a way to kind of chronicle what I was thinking and what I was feeling as the transition was happening. What it turned into was a chronicle of every bad thing that happened. So every negative encounter, every awkward going to the bathroom moment, or dirty stare or snide comment, I would write about. And in writing about them, it just made me more angry and more depressed the more I'd focused on the negative. And I'd had people saying, well, you should make a comic about being trans. And I thought about it, and I thought about it. And what I did was I said, okay, I'll make a comic strip. And I'll talk about these things that are happening, these experiences. I'm going to take 45 minutes to leave the house because I need to go down to the corner store to get toilet paper because I'm so self-conscious about my appearance. Or, the trying to figure out how to, go clothes shopping. And I've got Heidi, but I've got to figure things out on my own. And I can't be using her hand-me-down clothes because they don't fit quite right. So the idea was do it as a comic strip because I'm a comic strip artist. That's kind of first and foremost. Before everything else, that's kind of where my first initial thing. But what I discovered really quickly was the mandate from me was to always find a punchline. Always make sure that I can find a humor at the end of those few panels, so that if my cartoon avatar can find a way to laugh at stressful, dramatic situations, at bad things, maybe the real me can figure out how to do that too. And it a little bit worked over time.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
I like fiction therapy.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to do it. So do you do that full time, basically?
Full time, I'm a graphic designer. I actually
Okay.
am in an office now. So I have a regular office job. It was a client that I met up here. I was freelance for a few years with this client. And after a while, my other clients started trickling away. One client, rather amazingly, my pay got cut by the exact rate, by the exact national, like I was getting hourly a freelance rate. That rate got cut down by what just happens to be the exact rate difference between male and female wage earning nationally. It's like I came out and suddenly was worth that much less to my clients.
Oh, the world we live in.
Oh yeah.
My.
Oh yeah, it's kind of amazing. So I was still working freelance for a while, and then after a while, I was trying to get more money, and like, hey, I'd like to get a raise this year. I'm going to ask for more money on my because I'm freelance, so my rate is this now. And then work just went away.
Wow.
So I was kind of out of freelance projects other than my local client, and she needed somebody to do full time what I'd been doing freelance, and it worked out. And so I've been working there now for a few years, and so that's my day job. I work there, your standard 9 to 5-ish hours. Then I come home and I work on one of my comics, either the Giant Girl Adventures, which I do with my friend Sabrina Pandora. She's the writer on that one. My Finding Dee, which I write and draw myself, and then I've got the novels that I've been working on. So I'm always kind of working on something.
It's
I'm one of
a
those
good way to
people.
get through life, isn't it? Keeping busy.
It's a way.
It is a way. There you go.
Sometimes it's an exhausting way because I don't know how to shut down.
Yeah.
But I've always got a project going one way or another, and I don't know what to do if I don't.
Yeah.
So I need to be constantly telling stories. That's my thing.
Oh, it's a great way to spend energy for sure.
Yeah.
So tell our audience, what would you say to someone who has someone in their life that is either going through or wants to go through a transition? What advice would you give them?
To the person or the other people in their life?
To the people in their lives, not to the person. You could give me both, actually. So
I mean, because of what I do with the comic strip, I've actually had to do this a lot.
Okay.
I have parents who will come to me and be like, we saw your strip, and they'll often joke saying, and we wish we could show it to our kids who they want to come out as trans, but there's a lot of cursing in it. I'm like, it's based on my life, and guess how I talk. But I'll also joke and be like, you have young children who are getting ready to come out as trans. They're going to have to learn this verbiage very aggressively.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be thrown at them and weaponized.
Yes, exactly.
So
get over it. So to those parents, what would you say to them?
Basically speaking, to remember that your child is your child. There's, your child, your brother, your niece, nephew, cousin, aunt, uncle. They're the same person they've always been. They're not magically becoming a different inherent person. If they're a good person, they're still that same good person. They'll still have the same sense of humor and the same heart as the person you've always known, because it's not that we're not Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde or Ms. Hyde. God, that movie was terrible. But sorry, I segue a lot.
That's okay.
You know, the people that we love who are going through this, that they're the same person. You know, you'll make certain adjustments, but I mean, it's the same adjustment people make when a woman gets married and takes their husband's last name and no one blinks an eye.
Right.
You know, so suddenly Susan Smith is now Susan Wachowski. No one, oh, okay, yes. And they just, that's fine. That's perfectly normal. Everyone does that. And it's no different. You know, yeah, you have to do a little bit of work with it. And, you know, I'll also tell them, you know, and so do we. We do not wake up one morning, rechristen ourselves something else, and our entire brain has now, it's not find and replace in Word, where any instance of the old name or old pronoun are gone forever. We have to teach ourselves to, you know, rewrite those pathways in our brains and get used to it. Heidi's better at it than I am. I slipped up in the first few years with my own name more than she ever has.
Wow. Interesting.
So there's that. And then there's, because the one thing that I've heard the most from a lot of people is to where they personalize it, where they say, you know, they very much the, you know, I can't believe you're doing this to me.
Sure, they make it about themselves.
Yeah. And one thing I have to remind them is that chances are it has been about you before. You were one of the reasons that your loved one wasn't coming out. They were coming out to protect you from turning on them, from turning them away, from judging them. You know, I stayed in that proverbial closet for decades out of fear of what eventually happened.
Yeah.
With some people it happened. With a lot of other people, I have stronger friendships with some people now than I did before. You know, there are some people that were like, you know, wow, we were always trying to kind of connect to you and we could never figure out what was off. And then all of a sudden you came out, and I've now connected with some people that I only had kind of casual friendships with. I now have stronger friendships with.
Yeah.
But other relationships completely fall apart. But it's not about you. It's, you know, it's about us living our truth. Finally, we've been living lies for most of our lives because of other people.
Right.
Because of you, quite possibly.
Yeah.
In the case of said person. You know, and it's a terrible way to, you know, maybe it's going to make somebody feel bad, but we've been feeling bad for the entirety of the time before that. Just because you didn't know it didn't mean it wasn't happening.
Amen to that.
You know, a lot of us put very, very, very good masks up. You know, some of us put up very good facades to try to not let that show, or, you know, become hyper aggressively introverted about it, which was definitely my speed. So yeah, I mean, I guess those would be the two best things that, you know, without being specifically asked a question.
Sure.
I would say,
yep. Yeah. Good advice. I like it.
Thank you.
Well, what about someone who's actually wanting to go through it themselves? Would you give anybody any advice who is just starting out? It's like, okay,
before I give any advice, I would ask them questions about what their home life is like, what their situation is like.
Yep.
Because I was in a very, very, very advantageous scenario when I came out. I did not have children of my own. My wife Heidi has a son, and he has been very, very cool about the whole thing. A full-grown adult son who was very cool, picked right up on it. we're all fans of the Neil Gaiman story Coraline, the movie. So he calls me the other mother. So hey, other mother, it's adorable. But I was working freelance, which means I worked at home. I worked in my studio. I had a lot of advantages. I had built myself a good degree of privilege in comfort in my own life.
Sure.
In that regard. And in spite of my concerns, because we had moved to a very conservative region, you know, and the area matters, you know, what kind of place you're living in matters. But we've been very, very fortunate. And in that so far, I honestly think there's actually an advantage to the small town. I think I would have gotten more crap had we stayed in Tampa, where people are more anonymous. But the people who yell at me while they're driving down a road in a truck, I'm going to bump into them at the corner store in 45 minutes.
Right.
And then they're going to find out that the person who runs the corner store really likes me.
Yeah.
And then because that's happened. We've had people act like crap to my face and then show up the same place, a great restaurant or a karaoke bar that me and Heidi frequent. And it turns out we're really popular there.
Yeah.
And because that happened, I had somebody give me crap about using a single occupancy ladies' room, and she screamed and made a big scene and went to the owner of the bar and said, "What are you going to do about that?" And said, "Ask you to leave if you have a problem. That's the bathroom Dee uses." Shut that right up. So yeah. But yeah, advice, first thing, before I'd even think about advice, I'd ask all the questions I can about what their comfort level is. Because it's not like a physical challenge. And once you've done it, it's done and succeeded. It's a thing that you have to
live with.
You have to accept for yourself. You have to get up every morning and say, I am going to go out into the world and do this. And I mean, it's not everyone's. I'm a very introverted person, but I also refuse to be a very insular person. We go out into the world all the time. We are always going out someplace. We're going to local restaurants. Obviously, it's been a little bit tricky the last couple of years.
Sure.
In general, we are very visible. We had, because one of our friends was an administrator at our local YMCA for a while, we had YMCA memberships, and I was told very, very firmly that the YMCA was going to have my back with the bathrooms if there was ever an issue.
Wow, that's great.
And I've noticed, and I don't want to get too egotistical about it, but be a little egotistical, there are about 6 or 7 other out trans women in this area now that I never saw before I came out. And I like to think on some level that I'm hoping that us being really visible, like we do, you know, we set up tables where I'll sell my comics at local street fairs and festivals in the area. We are very, you know, as a graphic designer, I've designed logos for half the area that I'm in. Like half the main restaurants in this town have a logo I designed or a menu or something.
Sure.
Very visible. We're very out there. I'm not activisty in the sense that I'm not like kicking down doors and screaming to be heard. I just am. I just am out existing, being.
Yeah.
You know, we go to the movies and they like us at the movies because we buy a lot of popcorn and snacks and we're nice. You know, local restaurants like us because we're not jerks when we go into the restaurant. But we have a presence, and I feel like in some cases that presence has helped other people.
Sure.
But yeah,
that's going to make you feel good too, though.
Yeah, I ask questions like, would you be safe in your home life?
Yeah.
You know, do you think you would be safe at your job? You know, I always
not. What are you going to do, right?
Yeah. What is your backup plan for how you're going to function if things blow up?
Right.
And also, you know, that there are some things that can blow up and you might be more grateful for it when they do.
Yeah, that's true too.
It'll hurt, but you may find that some of those things that you're clinging to aren't healthy for you. I was hanging on to a lot of relationships, even though they're familial relationships, and we're trained from birth that those are the most important relationships, but they weren't. They were the most toxic relationships. They were the ones doing the most harm in my life, and holding on to them was causing me pain. And when those, I didn't close the door on anybody, but I locked it after they left.
There you go. Very good words. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this up today?
Not really. I mean, just it's, express yourself, be yourself, be honest with yourself, and project that to the world. For me as a creator, I like putting this into the work that I do. Be through my comic strip where it's about finding, and it's very rarely is it ever anything about transgender issues much anymore. It's just our everyday life. It's some goofy thing our dog did, or stuff like that. The book you were talking about earlier, Lycanthropy and the Single Girl, it's a werewolf story where I'm using it very much as a metaphor. It's one of those things where I've had people who have read it and who did not know who I was, and they're like, "Is this a transgender allegory?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is." You noticed. Yes, it's an entire book about self-acceptance and being happier as a result. Because I'm an old school Trekkie. I love metaphors for allegory. I love allegorical storytelling.
Okay.
So.
Excellent. Good advice. Good words. Thank you so much for doing this interview today with me.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And I thank everybody for listening to us today. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our channel. In addition to finding us here on YouTube, you can find us on Facebook, MyTransgenderNation. We have a website as well, MyTransgenderNation.com. If you have any ideas for future discussions, send us a message. Let us know what you're thinking about. We'll see if we can accommodate you. And hopefully we'll get to see you all real soon. Thank you for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.